Well, this ain't One Piece, but we sure do know treasure when we see it. Eren and the gang stared in awe as their eyes took in the sights of every object displayed there, the most prominent of which are the various weapons. Even the very walls are covered in weapons as well. Lulu was quick to point out that one of the axes there is even as big as Kubaru. Tarakan, on the other hand, approached Brett and Judith and explained that his brother suggested a weapon for this duo. Much to Judith's surprise, the chief orc led them to a pair of swords hanging on the wall called yin-yang swords. One silvery white in color, while the other one has a brownish-black tint as its scabbard. And of course, it had to be a couple of swords for our brave ship. Tarakan went on to explain how one of the swords has a cold energy, similar to the shadows, while its pair has a warm energy like the sun. Apart from being called yin-yang swords, these two blades are also intuitively referred to as the red blade and the blue blade. So yeah, it's most definitely for Brett and Judith alright. Just look at their color association. The two swordsmen quickly inspected their new blades, and as soon as they did, each of the sword's blades changed color respectively, much to Judith and Brett's shock. Even Tarakan was surprised by the change the swords exhibited just now, and he couldn't believe that the swords finally showed their true forms. Now he understands why his brother recommended the yin-yang blades to these two, since it clearly shows that they are the sword's respective masters. Still, Brett was respectful enough to ask if it was okay for them to have something legendary like this, but the orc chief assured them that it was alright. Heck, even the swords have chosen them as their masters, so he tells the two that they shouldn't hesitate to accept these gifts, and that they would love if both Brett and Judith accepted it wholeheartedly. So that settles two of our heroes. Let's go and check out Eren this time. Currently, our MC is still looking around the esteemed armory with his sorcery teacher and Ilya by his side. He even asked Lulu if the cat has chosen for herself, but the latter only answered that there are too many to choose from, which is why she can't decide. They already walked through a couple of swords, the majority of them as big as themselves, but Lulu finds some of them too sharp while the others are way too big. Just then, Eren and Lulu simultaneously looked at a shiny pendant, sparkling with white, blue, and orange at its centerpiece. Both master and student hurriedly pointed out that this is the one they want, confusing Ilya. Our MC, however, explained that even if he doesn't know why, the pendant stood out to him the most, which is why he chose it. Lulu, too, added that she has a good feeling about it. Since they have chosen their pick, Tarakan went over to their group and, seeing that Eren and Lulu chose the pendant, told the two that this pendant once belonged to an incredible elementalist many years ago. However, the origins of the pendant date too far back that Tarakan has no idea about its background whatsoever, so personally, he wouldn't recommend it to them. However, as a mystic believer himself, the orc chief said that he wouldn't ignore a sorcerer's intuition, which is why he freely gave the pendant to Eren and Lulu, making the two appreciate the gift even more. So that's that. Now, moving on to the former champion of the Land of Attestment. Iliad is still busy looking around, when Judith came up and asked if she has decided on a weapon of choice yet. However, the silver-haired swordsman just chose a small sword, similar to a dagger, much to Judith's surprise. But hey, who are we to judge? With a skill like that, any weapon in her hand could be deadly. Still, the redhead couldn't hide her surprise, since she thought Ilya would pick something much bigger, but the latter just chose to remain quiet. Little did they know, their friend is having an internal struggle with what she wanted to do, which is something she still doesn't know till now. What's worse is that she doesn't even know anything, whether it be what she likes or the type of blade that fits her. But she can't exactly say this to her friends, can she? Well, that's a problem for another time. The next day, Kubaru finally finished his administrative duties and met up with Eren and the rest of the gang. Lulu was the first to question why their fortune-teller orc friend chose to suffer alone, instead of opening up this burden to them, but Kubaru just laughed it off, seeing how his younger brother must have filled them all in on what has happened within their tribe. But more important than that, Kubaru got bad news to share. His teacher, who they believed could interpret Eren's dream, had already died a year ago. Our hero was surprised to hear this, while Kubaru explained that this isn't something surprising for him, considering his father is already in his 70s, while his teacher is much older than the former orc tribe chief. But it's not all bad, since Kubaru has some good news to share as well. The orc told Eren not to worry, since Kubaru said his teacher left a letter for him. At the mention of this, Eren raised his head in question. while Kubaru shared that maybe his teacher knew all along that he'd come back many years later, along with our hero and the rest of the crew. Moreover, his teacher Guru Garu also left a riddle at the end of the letter which he hasn't solved yet, and he believes that once he solves it, Kubaru will be able to get whatever his late teacher has left for him. He just needs a little time to decipher it. At this, Aaron's mood instantly lifted, telling his orc friend that they'll just wait for him as he works on the riddle. While waiting, the rest of the crew did what they do best, swordsmanship training. So while Kubaru is left to his devices, our favorite team went ahead to the Drukali arena to spar with each other. While they were busy sparring against one another, some of the orcs came down to take a look. The spectators knew the majority of them. From the Ilya of the House Lindsay as well as Brett from the Lloyd family, when one of the orcs questioned who Aaron was, addressing him as the kid with the long sword. The first orc explained that although he did not come from any prestigious family like the first two, Aaron is a disciple of a noble man, and the only swordsman they didn't talk kindly about is Judith. In fact, they even knew she came from lowly beginnings and started talking smack about her. One of the orcs pointed her out as the red hair without a last name, not even bothering to mask his disapproval of how she managed to join their crew, and calling her a disgrace of a warrior. Little did they know, Judith heard it all but chose not to say anything, doing her best not to get aggravated by what they said, so she just gritted her teeth. Brett also told her to hold herself back since if she blew up right then and there, it could spell trouble for Kubaru. And the tension is high enough as it already is. Even Judith is aware of this herself, which is why she told him that Kubaru's situation was the only thing that's holding her back. A few days went on, and before everybody knew it, a week has already passed and the four swordsmen continued to spar while waiting for Kubaru. By now, a crowd of orcs have gathered at the arena, and even they were impressed with Judith's skills, despite calling her a weak human, as the other orcs said that she was good despite growing up poor. The correlation between these two factors doesn't make sense to me, but these orcs sure do love to talk smack within earshot of other people. Hearing this, Judith let out one exasperated sigh, and in the next second, she called out one of the trash-talking orcs and told him to come down and fight her instead of running his mouth like that. The orcs couldn't believe it. She was picking a fight with them. And to prove that she meant business, she started calling them names like fools and jerks in their own native language. This made them all the more surprised, asking her how she knew their language. To this, Judith fired back saying she learned it thanks to Kubaru, who taught her a few cuss words in orc language. What's more, she jabbed at their ego, saying how she's disappointed at them for being such disgraceful warriors. And to add the final nail in the coffin, Judith issued a challenge to all of them, shouting that if they got something to say, then they best say it inside the ring and how she'll take all of them on. But instead of the first two orcs who rose to her challenge, a certain armored orc intervened and stepped up on the ring and in front of her, saying he couldn't pretend not to hear what she just said. This orc, who is the vice commander of the Crimson Axe Battalion named Gunther, is much taller than Judith. However, our redhead refused to back down while Brett looked on worried, since the orc facing Judith right now is the one Kubaru warned them about. Moreover, Gunther told Judith that he couldn't let what she said slip since she just insulted their whole tribe as a Drukali warrior, telling her to take responsibility for what she just said. But before he could continue what he said, our redhead cut him off, surprising Gunther while Judith told him that it's his people he should be teaching manners about instead of directing it to her. She also pointed out that they were the ones who were talking high and mighty about bloodlines and honor, but their words don't exactly match their actions. And it most definitely does not reflect the whole orc tribe as Gunther's anger began to build up. Instead of lecturing her, Judith told the orc warrior that he should take responsibility and just battle it out to find out who among them is the real warrior. Now, she's done it. The orc warrior is full-on mad right now, telling Judith that he'll make her regret saying those words while our redhead continues to taunt him, but before the two could brawl it out, another orc came running, calling out Gunther. This other orc informed him that Guru the Great, Kubaru's teacher, has appeared on the Spirit Mountain. This both confused and shocked Gunther, who asked if the late sage just came back to life, but the other orc had trouble explaining what just happened. So all of them came running to Spirit Mountain to discover Kubaru on the ground, surprised and looking up at a floating figure in front of him. It was Guru indeed. Seeing the old sage, Gunther asked Kubaru what he did, but in his mind, Gunther is wondering what Kubaru is planning, seeing how he revived Guru. the animosity already building up. But the old sage already knew Gunthi was wary of Kubaru, so he just told the orc warrior to relax and assured him that what he was worried about won't happen, shocking the Drukali warrior. Moreover, Guru explained that he's only here to chat with his disciple, which he hasn't seen for so long, as well as to express gratitude for his companions who brought him back. After he's done with all this, Guru said that he'll leave and advise those who have no business with them to leave and give room to Kubaru and the rest of Aaron's gang. As soon as it was just them, the old sage thanked Aaron and the crew for bringing Kubaru back, since even he wasn't sure if he'd get to see his disciple again. As soon as he finished expressing his thanks, Guru used his orc vision to assess them, and he was quick to pick out Aaron as the person Kubaru must be talking about. The old sage confirmed that it is just as Kubaru said and straight up told Aaron that he can interpret his dreams for him. At this, Aaron listened more intently as Guru told him that the man from his dreams that he's been curious about all this time is actually a past version of himself, one from a long time ago. So yes, 10 points for you all who guessed that it was Aaron's past self indeed. Hearing all this, Rhett and Judith couldn't believe what the old sage just said, even repeating it to confirm if they heard it right. Guru confirmed that it is so, but he couldn't show him his past life right now since he first needs to prepare himself, and asked Aaron for a bit of time to do so. And while he's at it, the old sage told the crew that he prepared something for them while waiting, since he didn't want them to get bored, which surprised them. However, before Guru could give them his gift, he first needs to consult with Tara Khan, telling his disciple to fetch the orc chief for him, which Kubaru willingly did. They went about their business with Tara Khan also present at the scene, and after much deliberation, Kubaru approached his friends that they'd come to a decision. But it was Tara Khan who continued, saying that the gift they'd like to present to Aaron and his friends is the aura application method passed down to Drukali's high-ranking warriors called the 5-element divine technique. At this, all of the orcs, as well as Aaron and the crew, were shocked, and one of the orcs named Halifa, from the Lady of the Court's faction highest authority, was the first one to voice out his disapproval. Tara Khan questioned why the orc warrior is against it, and the latter answered with another question, asking them why they decided to reach such an important decision like this among themselves only, especially since this is something that concerns the 5-element divine technique. It's a special technique wherein the great warriors of their tribe dedicated hundreds of years of their lives to create the very essence of the set technique. Halifa stressed how they could just give away something as important as that to some humans they barely knew. Despite Halifa's outburst, Tara Khan answered that they weren't simply giving it away, and reminded the other orc that the heroes of the past shared their knowledge with other tribes as well, which resulted in the creation of something much more valuable. It's because of this that their tribe was able to enjoy an era of prosperity. This time, it was Gunth who voiced his disapproval, reasoning that Aaron and those people from the stories are different since those high-ranking warriors proved themselves to be worthy, whereas Aaron and the group haven't. He did acknowledge the two swordmasters, Aaron and Ilya, as well as Brett's noble lineage since he's a descendant of the Lloyd family. But Gunthi pointed out that Judith isn't and has yet to prove her lineage or her worth. Moreover, Gunther told Tara Khan how Judith insulted their whole tribe, as Judith could only grit her teeth and was about to speak up. If it wasn't for Brett, who intervened and told Gunth not to leave out the rest of the story, Tara Khan would not have been aware that the orcs were the first ones to insult Judith. But they weren't letting up. Halifa stressed once again, before everything else, that Judith hasn't proven herself as a warrior is an undisputed fact, which is why he requests for Tara Khan to call for a council meeting. The orc chief agreed, but told Gunth that he will not disregard what they have said earlier, and ordered the Drukali warrior to put his honor on the line and tell the whole truth at the council meeting, which he agreed to. Since the council meeting is a top priority, Tara Khan told Aaron and the rest to wait for them once again, which is what our heroes did. It's not like they have a choice, don't they? While the rest of the orcs gathered for the council waiting, the 4 swordsmen sat waiting on the stands, and it was Judith who broke the silence, telling them that it was all her fault and that she should have just kept her mouth shut. Judith apologized for it all, saying that now they also have to suffer because of what she did, and because she can't undo what's already done, she'll take responsibility and fix this. Instead of accepting her apology, Aaron had to ask if she was really Judith, since he can't believe that she was actually apologizing. The sun must be rising in the west tomorrow then. Anyways, Aaron's comment brought back the short-tempered Judith, but before she could lash out, Tara Khan and the rest of the orcs came back, signaling the end of the council meeting. The tribe chief began by saying that he heard about the issue earlier from Gunth, and as the representative of their tribe, apologized to her for how they acted. However, Tara Khan also told them that they have reached a decision during their council meeting, and unfortunately, they didn't acknowledge her qualifications. Despite hearing all this, Judith's face remained the same, while Tara Khan explained that even if her qualifications were acknowledged, it could change if she manages to pass their tribe's customary warrior trial. That being said, the orc chief asked her if she was fine with that and ready to take on the challenge. After considering all he said for a bit, our resident redhead was quick to accept it, shocking both Brett and Aaron. But before they could say anything else, Judith said that the gift was prepared for all of them, at least according to Guru Garu. With a smile, she told her friends that this means this is a trial that she could surely surpass. Finally, we're loving this Judith mini-arc that the story is giving us. The challenge took place the very next day at the arena, where Judith stood alone, inside the ring as the spectators booed her with all their might. Now, here's the thing you need to know about the trial. The warrior trial is a test to prove yourself as a skilled warrior, and it requires the participants to take part in hand-to-hand combat. To win the trial, the participant must face off and win against 3 high-ranking warriors in a row so that they could be acknowledged as a skilled warrior. Our resident redhead ditched her cloak and armor and now sports a comfortable camisole as she ties her hair in a pony, while Lulu cheers on from the side with all her might. For the first trial, Judith's opponent is none other than Gunth himself, who is doing his best to intimidate the former. Despite the orc standing a good 3 feet taller than Judith, she shows absolutely no signs of anxiety or fear, as the crowd continues to hurl insults toward her. Before they duked it out, Gunth told her that she'll finally see what true warrior is like, but Judith didn't back down one bit. As soon as they signaled the start of the match, Gunth quickly lunged at her, using his height as an advantage, but he soon realized the error of his move when Judith leaped and punched him at the chin, the force making his head throw far back. Halifa, who was watching it, was surprised at the attack, while Brett looked invigorated. "Ha, that's our girl. Now, back to the fight." Gunth gritted his teeth, trying to regain a semblance of control, but our resident redhead is too quick for him, and she kept moving about and threw quick and powerful punches at him consecutively. The orc had no choice but to raise his arms in defense, and as soon as he did, Judith kicked him hard on the ribs, making him dizzy with pain. Seeing how Gunth is all bark and no bite, Judith tries to taunt him again to do better since his friends are watching, but she was too quick for him to catch. Until finally, Judith positioned herself behind him, and before she could deliver the finishing move, she asked Gunth once again what exactly is a real warrior. And before he could answer, our redhead caught him in a powerful chokehold before squeezing it tighter and slamming his body on the ground. And yep, those were Gunth's famous last words. The orc crowd couldn't believe it. How could a mere human beat an orc with her bare hands? And as they sat there, speechless, Judith walked away, dusting off her hands and belittling Gunth's arrogant butt. It serves him right though. Meanwhile, Brett's already up on his seat, cheering a little too loudly for Judith, as Ilya and Lulu give him the bombastic side-eye, but Brett just ushers her to do the same to her next 2 opponents. There's no time for celebration, however, since Judith's next opponent stepped inside the ring. And while he's at it, even this orc said that Gunth talked big and became careless. Now, standing in front of our redhead is Garam, her opponent for the second trial. Compared to Gunth, this orc is more jacked up in size compared to Gunth and sports a few scars here and there. As soon as the 2 of them came face to face, Garam asked if Judith was cool with getting down to business ASAP, which she obliged, as the crowd found a new hype for Garam since he's the strongest of the 3 orc warriors fighting today. What kind of taijutsu could this orc have up his sleeve? As soon as they signaled the start of the match, Garam disappeared from Judith's sight, leaving her surprised, but thankfully, she was quick enough to see the incoming fists surrounded by mana coming her way. But despite seeing this, she couldn't get out of his trajectory, so our redhead had no choice but to receive the blow head-on with only her arms to block the force. She skidded all the way to the opposite side of the ring, thanks to the force, as Garam warns her that this match will be different from the first one. The orc added that since he doesn't like to take chances, he'll go all out from the start. Seeing how Judith skidded all the way to the opposite side of the ring, Garam decided to approach her and walk steadily as our redhead tried to regain her stance, still trembling from the force of his blow. Brett tells Aaron that this fight won't be easy, with the others agreeing to him, especially since our hero sees that the orc has more aura than their friend. Although he's aware that not everything can be based on the amount of aura alone, it sure as heck won't be an easy fight. Judith gets into her position once again as they call for the match to resume when Garam moves forward and throws a swing at her. She manages to evade the first strike, but for the second swing, She didn't have time to react well, so it threw her off balance. Thankfully, our redhead is quick on her feet, but she sees her disadvantage seeing how Garam has a longer reach than her, thanks to his long arms. So she thought that she needs to get closer to attack. But as soon as she did, his knee covered in aura came flying toward her, once again blowing Judith a few good meters away from him. Now this is one tough MMA fighter of an orc she's fighting. Now that she is skidded to a stop, Garam concentrated a lot of his aura on his left foot and then used the force to propel himself toward her, while his left fist is all powered up by aura. This surprised Judith, thinking that he was aiming for her right side, but then she was a fraction of a second too late to notice his right foot, powered up in aura and is already mid-swing. It's a fake. Before he made contact, Garam told her with a quiet voice how pathetic she was, with Judith this time flying on the other side of the ring, her body bouncing off the ground. The Drukali warrior approaches her once again while telling her that he's not sure if she managed to win earlier because of sheer luck, but he reminded Judith that everyone in the world is born with their own limitations and innate destiny, reminding her that everyone has a predetermined place in life. While he's giving this speech, our resident redhead is already up on her feet, a little too roughed up and huffing for breath, but still good to go. Now, Garam stands in front of her. Living as he said that today, he hopes she realizes the gravity of the words he just said. For the last time, he tells her to give up, warning Judith that this is the last ounce of generosity he'll offer her as a true warrior, but instead of accepting his offer, Judith decided to just get on his nerves and told him how he likes to keep running his mouth. Classic Judith. As she spits blood from her mouth, she tells him to come at her again, which definitely struck a nerve on Garam's part, and is also the reason why he was quick to throw a kick at her. Lesser reflexes. She had her guard up when his shin made contact with her body, but he quickly followed it with a right hook. This time, Judith ducked while Garam covered his right leg with aura again, telling her that he'll make her pay for what he just said. But he wasn't able to swing his right leg fully since Judith already grabbed it. As she did so, Judith generated a crazy amount of aura, focused it on her head, and bashed it right into his solar plexus, making Garam bow out in pain. Karakum, who was watching on the side, used his ability to see that Judith's aura is firing up, literally, and he's impressed how she hit him right in the solar plexus as well. And that crap not only hurts like hell, man, it robs you of your breath. Man. And that's exactly what's happening to Garam right now, who's trying to gasp for air apart from being blown backward. Judith, on the other hand, used this opportunity to hit back, and she did so by dashing toward him and covering her fist with aura as she punched him hard in the face, streaks of fire surrounding her attack. Even a Drukali warrior noticed this, with her fist feeling hot on his face, but right now, he has to focus on the fight. Meanwhile, Karakum couldn't believe that Judith has the fire element infused in her aura. How could she use the 5-element divine technique without learning it first? She's just like Irene. For real, truly a part of the golden generation. Back to the fight. Garam and Judith now slug it out as both warriors match each other blow by blow. In one of their attacks, Judith even managed to slam her first right into Garam's, and every time, more fiery streaks emerged from the attack, making the orc pull his hand back as the fires licked his skin. On the sides, Kubaru's father is busy analyzing Judith's aura, especially now that he discovered hers contained the fire element. It's even more concerning since the element of fire is the trickiest of them all, since if one cannot control it properly, the user will just end up being consumed by their very flames in the end. Now, back to the fight. Both fighters are injured from each other's blow, but none of them is still letting up and continuing to duke it out. Garam managed to sneak a punch on Judith's face, but our redhead remains unfazed, bearing it all with the thought of proving herself to win. As the fight wore on, Karakum continues his observation of Judith, noticing how she doesn't know how to manage the element properly yet and is just blindly using her body to withstand it. Well, what did you expect, old man? Y'all didn't acknowledge our girl's qualifications, so she's duking it out with this beast. So, back to the fight. Garam once again sneaks in another straight punch to Judith's face, but instead of staggering back, she get him back with a high kick on his face. While all of this is happening, it made Judith realize a couple of important things. For one, she's always known that she's jealous of her friends. She'd be lying if she didn't admit it, even to herself, but the thing is, she never blamed her birth for where she is right now. But she has to admit, Brett's freedom, Aaron's tough spirit, as well as Ilya's innate talent made her want to be like them. This is the very reason why she was jealous in the first place, but she doesn't hate the fact that she's always jealous of them. Judith is well aware that this inferiority complex of hers and her desire for more are the reasons that she's standing where she is today. While she's contemplating this, Judith has her guard up as Garam threw another punch her way that pushed her back. But instead of showing pain, she only grinned back at the orc. And before he knew it, there was a bright streak of orange light that dashed straight to him. Brett's not the only one cheering loudly from the sides anymore. Aaron and Ilya are both up and shouting, cheering their friend on as she battled it out with Garam. This is the most emotion we've seen Ilya show that's not toxic, so this is new. Bonus points for carrying Lulu in her arms too. Concentrating all of her aura in her first, Judith decided that she'll continue to do her own way, hating and being jealous of her friends until she becomes the best of them. Now powered up from the aura, Garam gave one last look of horror as the last thing he saw before he got knocked out cold is the flaming fist of Judith as it landed on his gut. Garam lay motionless on the ground as it was announced that the match is over with Judith as the victor. Our girl really went out with Falcon Punch as her finishing move. As her name was called out, our redhead cried out in joy as the rest of her friends cheered from the side. Unlike them, the crowd couldn't believe it. She beat two of their high-ranking warriors straight in a row. But no matter, the next orc warrior is up as they started to chant Fahan's name. This time, their cheers are fiercer, urging the Drukali warrior to avenge his fallen brothers, but before he could even walk up to Judith, Halifa stepped up and intervened. It was Halifa who approached Judith now, while the crowd cheered thinking that the older orc would be fighting on their behalf. But Aaron became concerned for Judith, knowing that his friend is in no good shape to take on another powerful opponent. But in true Judith fashion, she just raised her fists and told the older orc to bring it on, glaring at him as she did so. But what he said next caught her by surprise. "We give up," Halfia said. "Nani?" This made Judith less aggressive and dumbfounded, but Halifa explained that she not only has proven herself as a skilled warrior, but she also possesses an unbreakable spirit and inextinguishable flame, showing all of them that she deserves to be called a warrior in her own right. Once again, he admits that they lost and acknowledges her as a true warrior. Finally, Judith getting the recognition she deserves. After Judith won, things settled down for a little bit, and it was not until a week later, before our heroes were summoned to learn about the 5-element technique in the company of the Drukali warriors, led by a Drukali elementalist named Goruva. The Elder Orc informed our 4 swordsmen that before they begin teaching the technique, they must first conduct the 5-element ceremony and inform them of the object in front of them, an urn from Drukali elementalists that was passed down from the time of their ancestors. To begin the ceremony, they must first put their hand inside the urn, take out the formless energy, and throw it to a certain distance. As they do this, they get to find out which element they are compatible with, which will aid them in learning the 5-element technique. Garula first called on Judith, asking if she would like to give it a try, which our resident redhead obliged to. A lot of the orcs were eager to find out what she will draw, including Halifa, who was also present there. And as soon as her hand came up, there was an orange orb floating in her hand as Garuha instructed her to throw it on the side. As soon as she did, the orb exploded and became a blazing torch that rose at least 10 feet in the air, leaving everyone surprised, including Kubaru's father. As soon as the flames died down, Judith turned to Goruva, asking if she did right, but the Elder Orc looks as if he had just seen a ghost. He told her that the flame Judith had is the largest he has seen so far during the 5-element ceremony, and added that he sensed it before, during her trial, that she's naturally blessed when it comes to the fire element. Since she was done, Judith stepped aside and Garua called Aaron next. As soon as he dunked his hand into the urn, he quickly threw the energy on the side, and with it, streaks of fire blazed as well, forming a circular pattern on the ground. What's even more shocking about Aaron's energy is that in the middle of the circular flames, a metallic alloy, shaped like a sword, emerged from the ground. What in the Full Metal Alchemist is this? If Karakun was surprised by Judith's energy, he was even more shocked by Aaron seeing this. His energy is metal-wielding fire. He noticed how the flames on the ground refined into a massive metal energy, which is pretty crazy. Even Gorula couldn't believe it as well, as if manifesting 2 elements wasn't impressive enough. Aaron was even able to create a metal with such a distinct shape, which made him wonder just who the hell this kid is. Since curiosity got the better of him, the Elder Orc decided to ask our MC if he has learned elementalism before. Aaron answered that he learned about the basic theory from Kubaru. Upon hearing this, it made the Elder even more shocked. Like, hot damn, could this day get any more bizarre? But at the same time, he now low-key understood why Guru Garu wanted to pass on the technique to them, since he was already able to control it after learning just the basics. Unlike the orc elders who were low-key losing their crap at seeing Judith and Aaron's energy, the two seemed pretty chill about it, but our redhead was quick to point out that her flame was bigger than Aaron's. This caught our hero off guard since he's not following her logic, but Judith just explained that she'll never lose when it comes to fire no matter what. Aaron just conceded, not knowing how to reply to a statement like that, which annoyed her even more. Little did they know, their blue-haired friend is relieved to see that Judith seems to be back to her usual self. He was quick to notice how she has been different ever since they were in Eisenmarkt, but it looks like there's no need for him to worry anymore. Seeing her laughing once again, Brett thought to himself how proud he is of Judith when he let slip out loud how he thinks Judith looks so cute when she smiles. Oh too bad for him. Ilya's within earshot, who only gave him an incredulous stare as Brett slapped his hand pretty hard to shut his mouth. He tried to explain to Ilya that it was all a misunderstanding, but the former champion just backed away from him while this time, it's Aaron and Judith who are wondering what their friends are doing. Moving forward to the next swordsman, Garua called on Ilya, and surprisingly, the former champion also has an affinity with the fire element as well. It was only Brett who differed from the rest of the crew. Unlike the rest who are more adept with fire, his energy is akin to the water element. And with that, the ceremony ended with Garuha applauding them for having exceptional energy levels, and he was pretty sure that it will get much better as they progress with the lesson. Karaku stepped up and told Aaron that he will personally teach him as our hero expressed his thanks to Kubaru's father. Just then, one of the orcs came running and told Karakum that he has a message from Guru Garu. According to the messenger, the old sage has finished all the necessary preparations to look at Aaron's past life and asked to bring him and the rest of the gang back to Spirit Mountain. It didn't take long for our heroes to come running to Spirit Mountain, and as soon as they get there, what welcomed them is a large transmutation circle drawn on the ground with 5 blocks of stone placed in the middle, and a small one right above the middle slab. Is it just me? Or is this manhwa starting to get into full metal alchemist? What's next? Do they sacrifice people for the sorcerer's stone? Anyway, back to the story. Kubaru explains to them that they all need to lie down on a stone slab, including Lulu too. So that explains the small slab of stone. Now, Guru Garu floats about, telling Aaron that it's time for him to finally meet the man in his dreams that has left him confused all this time, as our heroes each lie on their respective stone slabs. But before he started the process, Guru Garu asked him one last time if he was alright with sharing his past life with the others, and if he has no objections whatsoever, which Aaron told that he has no problem with sharing it all with them. Since that settles it, Judith asked the old sage what they were supposed to do while the ceremony takes place, but at the snap of his fingers, the group instantly fell asleep. Now, our heroes are off to Dreamland. It was dark at first before someone started blinking, and in front of him stood 2 armored soldiers, addressing him as their lord and urging whoever they are talking to that they should depart soon. Just then, a man cloaked in red with brown hair, closely cropped to his sides, and eyes similar to a dead fish stepped up and told his men that they should go. The 3 of them started walking in the middle of town, followed by numerous chatter and murmurs of how they can't believe this person is actually leaving his territory, right when it was infested by demonic creatures. But the man calmly continued walking, as another bystander narrated that this man is said to be possessed by a demon and even killed his own child. And who knows, maybe he, himself, is already a demonoid. With the murmurs getting clearer and louder, it didn't take long for the people to start shouting and blaming the man for bringing the demons into their town a couple of months ago. They started calling him a coward since now, of all times, did he choose to leave the town. Right when the people needed him most, one of the townsfolk even stepped up, trembling with a garden fork in his hand, demanding the lord of the town to speak. The man, who has a bandaged head, could be seen crying and enraged, demanding to know if their lord is truly the one who brought the demon into their town. To add, he even asks if he sold off his people to the said demon, demanding the nobleman to speak. But unlike the rest of them, the nobleman remained calm, telling them that it was no use trying to leave quietly after all. And since they're already here, he decided to tell them his story. It's up to them if they choose to believe him or not. Like many Gan heroes, this nobleman suffered a terrible fate wherein everything turned for the worse when it showed up a week ago. Out of the blue, the man's child suddenly stopped breathing, much to his wife's panic and horror, when just as suddenly, they heard a sinister laugh, followed by a red smoke screen and a voice asking if he would like to save his child. From the smoke screen emerged the clown demon that filled the family with instant terror. The demon addressed the man as Karen Winker, telling him that the life of his child is now at the mercy of his hams, wherein he proposed the cruelest deal Karen has ever had to choose from. He could either save his child or his wife. At this, Karen shouted in confusion, asking why he had to make such a tough decision and listen to the demon's demands. But to this, the clown demon only gave yet another sinister laugh, this time asking if he ever stopped and wondered if it was just a mere coincidence that the demons started appearing in this territory. What's even worse is this demon claims that whatever's happening to the territory right now, as well as to his child, is all his fault. Naturally, the man was confused, but the clown demon only told Karen Winker to accept his fate and make his choice. But even before he could do it, his wife suddenly spoke up and told him not to worry while handing him the baby. He looked even more confused until she got off the bed and started running toward the window as a horrified and crying Karen told her not to. Everything happened so fast that despite pleading with her, his wife continued climbing the windowsill and took one last look at their territory. As Karen rushed over to stop her from what she was about to do, his wife gave him one last smile, telling him to take care of their child before jumping to her death. Karen could only howl in agony, seeing what she just did, and then suddenly, he heard their child start to cry. As he turned to look, he saw that the demon has its baby in its arms while saying that it was against the rules and that his wife's actions weren't part of the choices. And as if the horror was not enough, the clown demon called off the deal and proposed a new one as the man started to huff in panic and horror. This time, the demon claims that the choices will be much easier, making him choose between his child or the lives of the people in her territory. Man, this is just as evil gets. I can't believe we're getting a crossover between D. Grayman and Full Metal Alchemist in one sitting. With the demon making him choose between the people and his child, Karen Winker tells the townsfolk who blocked his way that he lost both his wife and child on the same day. He believes that it was the best decision he could make at the time as the man started to cry, this time out of sadness and pity for their lord. But Karen said that wasn't the end of his horror, as the clown demon told him that he is cursed, and if he continues to stay within their territory, some type of disaster may befall the land. Once again, Karen addresses the townsfolk in front of him, saying that he does not plan to seek help from them, but his only wish is for them to not block his path. With that, Karen Winker went on his way, traveling the lands until finally it was just him. While walking down a beaten path one day, the clown demon once again appeared, snickering and asking him why there was no one following him anymore. It didn't stop there, since the demon kept pestering him with a lot of questions, like if this is how the townsfolk send off their lord who sacrificed himself for them, and asks Karen if he wants to kill them all since they have been nothing but ungrateful. Instead of falling to his taunts, Karen continued walking without a word, not even looking at the demon, as the latter floated over him and continued running its mouth. The demon went on about how his people should suffer and lose their families like he did for them to understand Karen's sacrifice and sadness. Just then, an idea popped into the demon's head, and this time, he appeared upside down, right in front of Karen, offering him to enter a contract with the clown demon. The sinister being told him that if he did that, then he could become a demonoid and slaughter everyone. He could even toy with them as he pleased, but before the demon could finish what it was saying, Karen walked past him without so much as a glance. Seeing that he's not reacting to any of its taunts, the demon found him boring and wondered if he picked the wrong person after all, saying that if it knew this would happen, then the clown demon should have just sent the demonic creatures to the next territory over. At this, Karen stopped dead in his tracks and finally turned to the demon, asking the evil creature what it meant by taking the demonic creatures to the next territory. Now that he got a reaction from Karen, the clown demon found him interesting again, since the man finally turned in his direction. Karen, on the other hand, is close to losing it as he asked the demon if the demonic creatures that plagued his territory, as well as his child's curse, were all his doing. Before answering, the demon snickered mockingly, admitting to the man that it was all of his doing. Karen Winker was never under a curse in the first place. At this, the man started hyperventilating, realizing the pointlessness of it all since this was just a game for the clown demon right from the start. As he thought more about the situation, Karen demanded to know why the demon could do such a thing, shouting at the evil creature with all his might what he did wrong for him to experience all of these. As for the clown demon, he paused for a moment and thought about it before answering that he was simply just a little bored, smirking as he said so. What's even worse is that this creature just happened to take a liking to Karen without good reason, saying that it was like fate. Hearing this, the man fell to his knees, forlorn at the truth as the clown demon began to disintegrate thanks to the red smoke screen surrounding his body. With that, he bade his goodbye to Karen Winker, saying how much fun he had, and told him that if the man wants to see him again, the only thing he needs to do is to come to the end of the mountains to the south. And just like that, the clown demon vanished without a trace while Karen, who was still on his knees, was seething with rage, tears still in his eyes. From here, he vowed to kill the demon and got up, saying that he doesn't care how many years it will take. He'll make good on his promise. Since he had no place to go, Karen walked on from one town to the next until he found himself in a little village. The eldest of the town welcomed him with open arms, but the man was too tired to care, despite the town leader's welcoming remarks. As he walked away to his new lodging, one of the townsfolk looked at Karen warily from afar. And yeah, he's the same dude that narrated the start of this manhwa way back in the first chapter. But back to Karen. Although his face doesn't show it, he's glad that this little town has not heard the rumors about him yet, so he decided to stay in this area and train to get stronger before setting out again to find the cursed demon. Day and night, Karen swung his sword without rest, and even the townsfolk from before were surprised to see how diligently he practiced his sword. By this time, Karen has been living for a year in this small town, and word had already spread that the stranger does nothing but swing his sword day and night. But looking at Karen like this, the man knows from the look in his eyes alone that the stranger has quite a devastating story to tell. As the little girl approached her father, the older man warned her daughter not to wander into other people's backyards just as she pleases, while Laura apologized and reached her arms out to be carried. Just then, the man threw a glance in the direction of Karen and was surprised at what he saw, prompting Laura to ask what was wrong. The man answered in mild surprise that the stranger is actually smiling, while holding the flower that Laura gave him. Finally, a not-so-heavy scene for the tragic Karen Winker. While holding the small yellow flower in his hand, Karen stopped and wondered about this familiar feeling that was starting to well up inside him. But he can't quite put his finger on it. But he knows what this feeling is, the unconditional devotion from his parents, as he remembered his childhood, being loved by them when he was young. With this in mind, he started practicing his swordsmanship again, swinging but with a different feeling this time, and from there, more feelings started to pour in. He also remembered the loyal support of his people, remembering their admiration for him, and based on this feeling, he took his next strike. Then, there's also his lovely wife and precious child, filling him with warm emotion. Thinking about all these emotions he felt back in the moment, he continued swinging while also realizing that it's been a while since he felt something like this, and devoted himself to the sword with a clear mind. Keeping these feelings close to him, Karen now swung his sword, no longer fueled by pure hatred from the clown demon, but with these warm and familiar emotions instead. And before he noticed it, the seasons had changed from autumn to winter back to spring again. By now, Karen has grown incredibly in physique and mentality. He's still plagued by nightmares that come out from his shadow, enveloping him in darkness and blaming him for what happened. As they started to swarm him, Karen spoke out loud that he first thought that it was the demon who sent these horrific illusions to him, but now he understood that all this time, it has been his anger, hatred, and all the negative emotions that consumed him which birthed all these nightmares. As soon as he finished talking, the nightmares disappeared like smoke, as he says that now he can finally move forward. Just then, Karen starts to emit a golden glow, taking a firmer stance as he feels it in his gut that the demon is somewhere here. With his sword shining brightly, he holds it close before delivering a mighty downward slash into the darkness. As soon as he did, what appeared right in front of him was the clown demon, victimizing yet another human who was already on his knees, a red smokescreen surrounding them. Both the man and the demon were surprised, more so the latter, not expecting Karen Winker to come to seek him. The demon asked what Karen was doing there, but instead of answering directly, the latter just told the creature that he's not surprised to see him up to no good once again. But this time, he won't let the demon do as he pleases. As he said this, Karen started to swing his sword, which made the demon conjure a violet orb, but before the clown demon could finish doing this, the old man already slashed him in half. Still, the evil creature lives, wondering how Karen managed to slash through the darkness. As he continued to puke blood from his mouth, the creature thought that he can't block Karen's attacks, so he decided that he needs to flee quickly, crawling and bloodied on the floor as he tries to conjure an exit with his magic. But the old man was quick to notice that the clown demon is attempting to escape and was about to run after him when he suddenly felt something that made him drop to his knees. Karen wondered if he had just reached his physical limit, lodging his glowing sword on the ground for balance, as he knelt panting for breath. He can't help but ask why it had to happen now of all times, just when he has finally created a sword that can cut through darkness, and yet he can't make the clown demon pay for his sins. Feeling devastated at what was happening and with the demon already escaping, Karen begged with all his heart for these feelings of his, as well as his will, to be passed on to someone as he lost consciousness. This is so heartbreaking to hear, but hey, at least the old man got one clean hit before he went off, right? Back in the real world, Judith, Brett, Ilya, and Kubaru are all awake and are looking at Aaron as it was finally revealed that Karen Winker continued swinging his sword to his last breath to fight the clown demon that appeared hundreds of years ago. And in this life, the one who inherited Karen's dying wish is none other than Aaron, who sits quietly and without a word. It took a lot to process what they've just discovered about the old man's identity, especially for Aaron, who has struggled to understand just who he is and why he kept appearing in his dreams. After the ceremony, our hero sits by himself in the arena, looking at the setting sun when Brett approached and decided to join him during his contemplation. The blue-eyed noble asked our hero what his plans are for the future, which the former admitted that he has no idea of, confused by everything that has happened even until now. Brett could only sigh in agreement, especially since it was a lot to take in. The two sat together for a little bit, with Brett telling Aaron that sometimes he can't help but reminisce about their days back at the academy and admitted to our hero that he disliked him for a time back then. At this, Aaron turned to look at him, as Brett continued to explain that he already knew there was a gap between him and Ilya, something he struggled to accept. But at the same time, there goes Aaron, who progressed at an alarming rate despite Brett ignoring him for a good portion of their time there. And when Aaron finally got to surpass him, it made the blue-haired noble hate him with every fiber of his being, since it made him feel like everything he has done was for naught. These feelings were pretty heavy for Brett, and he thought he would never be able to get over them, but back then, before he departed for home, the blue-haired noble recalled how Aaron approached him, telling how the former's sword swinging made our hero feel alive. After hearing that, Brett said that it took some time for him to realize what was important to him, which he managed to realize soon after. For Brett, being someone's family or friend, as well as his life as the Lord of the Lloyd family, is much more important than swordsmanship. And yet, there's something even more important for him to do that he found out a little later, with the image of Judith appearing in his mind. Then right out of the blue, Brett said out loud that he likes Judith, shocking Aaron. Yes, guys, Brett's not emotionally constipated like most guys. But back to his dialogue, Brett tells Aaron that he knows their redhead friend wants to become the best swordsman on the continent, and it's a rough road where one could be left with nothing if they don't manage to reach the top. He's also fully aware that every second's bound to be a competition that could be pretty tiring, which is exactly why he wants to be by her side to extend his support. Moreover, Brett also told Aaron that he wants to see Judith be happy as soon as she achieves her goal. After sharing all these, the blue-haired noble told our hero that he should also do what he wants and follow his heart, urging him to follow the path which he thinks is most important to him. If he does, Brett says to Aaron that he won't regret it, tapping him on the shoulder while giving him a reassuring smile, which our hero returned. The next day, Aaron resumes his 5-element training in the arena, and this time, he approaches Karakum, asking the older orc if he could spar with him again. The former orc chief obliged, weapon already on hand, as he tells Aaron to come at him. With the older warrior's approval, Aaron decided to rush in, sword in hand, as he uses aura manifestation to cover his body and attack Karakum. The resulting clash left a powerful impact, and the older warrior was quick to notice that something was different compared to the first time they clashed. This time he could clearly feel the fire energy in Aaron now, since the flames in his heart have combined. Filled with glee, Karakum comments about how there's something that has definitely changed within Aaron, and asked our hero if he obtained something from seeing his past life's memories and what made him change. To this, our hero told the former orc chief that he has something he wants to do now, apart from his family and friends. Another reason why he wants to wield his sword is that he wishes to do it so that more people can be happier. As he said this, he attacked Karakum with a large swing that the older orc managed to block, making Aaron jump back as the former told him that our hero has quite a big dream. As Karakum draws back his axe, he tells Aaron that his dream is even bigger than someone who just wants to become the best swordsman, saying it sounds like he has chosen to walk the path of a hero. Apart from this, Karakum also warned him that it's something that not anyone can just say lightly, asking Aaron if he even knows the weight of the words he just said. But Aaron, who's now more determined than ever, told him that even if it's embarrassing to say out loud, he'll gladly walk the path of a hero if that's where the road he chose led to. As he said this, the fire in Aaron's heart flared up all the more, covering his whole body with a golden aura. The two warriors lunged at each other exactly at the same time, and the resulting clash produced a powerful impact, but neither of them budged. Karakum was the first to speak out, telling our hero that he acknowledges his guts for saying that he'll walk down the said path, but also reminding him that it takes more than guts to do so, questioning Eren if he's even aware of how much responsibility a hero has to take on. Our hero was quiet as he skidded on the opposite side of the ring, while Karakum shouts from the other side that he was not convinced that our hero is the type of hero who can handle such responsibilities. Instead of answering him, Eren leaped high in the air, his sword drawn back, as he delivered a vertical slash toward Karakum's position, which the elder evaded. As Eren lifted his head to look at Karakum, he told the older warrior with a smile that all of the swordsmen he met until now have said that swordsmen talk through their swords. At this, the Drukali warrior smirked, as our hero told him that this decision isn't something he thought of just because he saw his past life. It was a dream close to his heart, born out of all the experiences he had in life so far. So even if he didn't see his past life memories, Eren believes that he still would have chosen the path of a hero, telling the older orc that he'll show him just how determined he was. As he said this, our hero shouted toward his opponent to let him spar with the older just a little longer, which made Karakum happy, saying that it was what he wanted to hear and promises to beat up our hero pretty badly. Eren and the rest of the crew spent quite a while in Drukali, and during the 4th month of their stay, Gorua thanked them for listening and working hard all this time and began praising the crew, starting with Brett. The older orc commended him for being able to master another element apart from water. But even if that is so, Gorua also told him that water is most definitely the element he has the most affinity with, achieving such mastery in a short time. On the other hand, there's Judith, who has put all of her focus on the fire element. Gorua warns her that if she just focuses on the said element and blocks the others, then there's a high chance that she'll engulf herself in flames one day. But instead of worrying, Judith told their teacher that it was alright since now she can handle any amount of fire in her heart. Plus, she admits that she can't even feel any other energy apart from this, which Gorua didn't question any further. And of course, we have our hero Eren, who Gorua applauds for creating a harmonious balance between metal and fire energy. The only concern the older orc has about him is that his energy flows in reverse. With this technique, it's normal to see the enhancing cycle at work, which is usually wood feeding fire. Then fire creates earth as earth finally becomes metal. But in Eren's case, they see the control cycle taking place, so Gorua tells him that if his fire continues to grow, then he needs water energy to control the heat and urging him to be careful. Our hero thanks the older orc for his advice as the later moves on to Ilya. Compared to the rest, the former champion didn't have the biggest development these last few months, but he assured her that she's still growing and to keep going instead of worrying. Ilya tells the older orc that she will do as he advised, but as soon as she did, the former champion looked glum, something Eren didn't fail to notice. The following day at the arena, Eren tells Brett that he intends to stay for a few more days, which made the latter question if the reason he's doing so is he's worried about Ilya. Our hero admits that being worried about her is part of it, but he also added that he has no plans to go back to the academy just yet. He added with a smile that before he goes back, there's someone he'd like to meet, then proceeded to ask Brett what his plans are with Judith. The blue-haired replied that they'll go back to the academy as planned, and at this, our hero said that it seems like they were about to bid their goodbyes for now, although it was a little sad. But instead of feeling sad about it, Brett just told him that this is only temporary, and they'll see each other again soon. Our hero agreed, and since the sun's hanging low and it's near nighttime already, he tells Brett that he needs to get back to his room, while the latter said that he'll go with Judith, urging him to go on ahead. In the ring, Judith is busy practicing with the sword Kubaru gifted her, thinking how she felt the tenacity of the old man through Eren's memories. It was a strength that he gained through devoting hard work in his life, which made her think that if she could only work just half as hard as him, she could do it. As she thought of this, the aura surrounding her body flared up, swinging harder each time. Thinking that with just a little more, she could achieve it, she just needs to give it her all. Soon enough, her trail of thoughts get off track as Brett approached her, asking for a duel since it's been a while since they did something like this. As the noble man raised his sword, he told Judith that this is also a good chance for them to assess the results of their training, which the redhead readily obliged. Soon enough, their blades came clashing against each other, fiery sparks flying everywhere every time they did so. Red is obviously on the struggling end, but he praises Judith, saying that she's like a whole new person now, as his opponent just told him that he picked the wrong time to challenge her, because right now, Judith's all fired up, the flame in her heart igniting even brighter. At this, Brett realized that her fire energy is getting intense and overwhelming his water energy when Judith suddenly threw a big swing at him, making Brett fall back as water droplets started to pour everywhere. Brett is still sitting on the ring, the setting sun on his face as Judith came running toward him, asking if he's okay. Meanwhile, he questions her if he did something wrong since he almost got fried just now. Judith got closer, now also wet from the water droplets of Brett's energy, apologizing because she didn't know this would happen as she bent over to check on him. As she did, she tells him that she really didn't do it on purpose. A look of concern evident on her face, but seeing her like this, Brett was too stunned to reply. "Boy, our man is whipped." Right then and there, Brett blurted out that she likes Judith, confusing her and asking what he likes, but he flat replied that it's her, she likes her, making our redhead blush instantly. It's really happening, guys, Brettith is sailing. Judith could only keep on saying what as Brett repeated that he likes her for the third time, earning a hard smack on his face with an embarrassed Judith shouting at what he just said. Brett, who was once again on the ground, asked what was that for, but Judith only huffed in reply, beet red, and asked him why he would joke about something like that, telling him that he was lucky she didn't cover her fist in flames. As soon as he recovered, he told Judith that he wouldn't joke about something like this, which left her all the more flustered, asking if he really likes her. Man, gotta applaud Brett's patience with her. At this, she asked him why he chose her, but he only commented why she kept asking a lot of questions, this time getting embarrassed as well and asking her if he really needs to spell it out loud. But before she could even answer, the blue-haired noble started listing down the things he liked about her, saying how she has a cute smile, and that he finds her cute whenever she wolfs down food, makes fun of Aaron, or when she plays with Lulu, and even when she's just training hard. Brett looks her in the eye and tells Judith that he finds all of it beautiful in his eyes, leaving Judith flushed and speechless. With a surprised look, she just asked him if she looks beautiful to him, but Brett just told her to stop asking questions and instead say something now. He moves closer to her and asks Judith what he thinks about him. With the setting sun as their backdrop and the love confession taking place in the arena, it couldn't get any more romantic than this.